Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to the live session. We're so excited to have so many of you here already in the room. Please do jump in the chat, say hello, let us know where you're joining from. We're going to have a very global crowd, I feel like, today. Look at this. We've got Florida, we've got Mexico, we've got India, London, Montreal, Costa Rica. Wow, I cannot even keep up with the chat. This is crazy.
This is
Welcome, everyone.
amazing.
Brighton,
Wow.
you're just down the road from me. I'm in Eastbourne.
Yeah. Nice. Joining you guys from New York here. So I saw a couple New Yorkers there. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just another minute or so. We're going to let everyone just get themselves in, but we're super excited to be here. And I just love seeing this global crowd, everyone coming together on a Thursday. We're nearly there. We're nearly at the end of the week, but this is an exciting one. So pleased to have so many of you here with us today. All right. We've got people still coming in, lots of people. Hello, Thomas. You've caught my attention straight away in the chat from New York.
How are you from NYC?
Shouting from New York.
We're doing great.
You're doing
At least
great.
over here where I am. Don't know about the rest of you, but
It's very dark in the UK. We are very much here in the thicks of winter, but look, we've got a lot to get through. So I think we should go ahead and jump straight into it. It gives me the greatest of pleasures to welcome everyone today to AI in L&D 2026. We're going to be breaking down all of this data. Hopefully, a lot of you have already been able to jump into that report, have a look at everything, because there was 20,000 data points in there. We had 421 responses, and it's really showing us how people, how teams are adopting AI, where they're getting stuck, and what the next 2 years are going to look like. So my name is Alice. I'm a senior customer enablement manager. I work on the academy team here at Synthesia, and I am joined by an expert panel, which I am so excited for. We have Dr. Philippa Hardman here with us and Kristen Budd, our very own instructional designer. Do you both just want to jump on and give a quick introduction?
Sure thing. Shall I jump in, Kristen? Yeah, why not? I'll go for it. So nice to see you all. Alice says, it's just so exciting to see all these different names and places popping up. Hi, I'm in the north of England, where, like you, Alice, it's very cold and very dark.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Phil. Short version is that I'm a researcher. I spend my life either in libraries or sitting down on the ground with L&D teams, trying to work out how we connect like the science of how humans learn with how we actually like analyze, design, develop, and evaluate learning experiences. As you can imagine, in the last 3 years or so, a lot of the focus of my work has become AI. I basically research if and how AI might impact all of the different tasks that we do as L&D professionals. Also host a boot camp every month, which I absolutely love. So if you've not done that yet, come and join me. It's fabulous. But yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited to share some of the findings from the survey.
Thank you so much for joining us. Kristen.
awesome. I am so glad to be here with all of you guys today. My name is Kristen Budd. I am the instructional designer here at Synthesia, and I work very closely with Alice and the rest of our team to use Synthesia to teach Synthesia so people can use Synthesia to teach other people how to teach things. That's a mouthful, but what that means to me is really taking a lot of the sciences and research behind learning, a lot of the things that Dr. Hardman is using, and finding ways to make that practical and accessible in the day-to-day of content development, using AI tools to help people learn better. What does this mean in as an instructional designer to leverage these tools as the technology is evolving so quickly? What do we need to do differently? What do we need to do better? And what do we maybe need to not be doing anymore? So these are the things I'm curious about and am always looking to figure out. So I'm excited to be here with you all today.
I'm just so excited to be able to get both of you in the room today and really break down this report and look at how we can sort of provide some actionable next steps for people, because I know that's what everyone's going to want to walk away from today. And we're really just going to take it as a conversation. We're going to work through the report section by section so that we can just have a nice conversation and hopefully share some insights that everyone's going to be able to take something forward with, which is just amazing. Now, I'm going to do a very quick bit of housekeeping before we do jump in. So we're wanting people to put questions in the Q&A. We're going to do a Q&A right at the end of the session. But also, we're going to be answering your questions throughout. I'm going to be asking questions. I want your questions. It's going to be a really great conversation. We are recording this session, and we do that so that we can share it with you afterwards. So anyone that wasn't able to attend live, they're going to be able to get a copy of it. We're going to be running some polls. I want your engagement, and please be in that chat, connecting with us, connecting with each other. This is an opportunity for a group of AI innovators to really connect with each other and have a great conversation. So let's open it up with a bit of an icebreaker. And my first poll is, what festive superpower should AI get for December? So a bit of a fun one. I want to know, should we be turning chaos into calm? Should we be auto-generating the perfect holiday playlist? That feels like that's specifically for me. Predicting which meetings can be cancelled, transforming leftovers into gourmet meals, or producing snow on demand. I would love some snow in the UK, but we don't really get it here, do we, Phil?
Yeah, maybe some sleet at some point.
Maybe, if we're lucky. Look at all these sort of coming through. Predicting which meetings can be cancelled. Has everyone started circling back for 2026? Has that happened to anyone? Have you had your first circle back yet?
What a festive superpower. Let's go.
Yeah. See you in Q1.
Yeah, we need to get this doing a Q1. No, just a little bit of fun. And I think it does really speak to the fact that AI can be a bit of a superpower for us, and it's how we start to leverage it. So it's just a little bit of fun there right at the beginning, and people saying in the chat they're going to copy that poll for theirs. So do go ahead. That is absolutely for you to play around with. All right, let's get into it, because there's so much to unpack in this session. And we're going to be kicking it off with adoption and maturity. And I'm going to actually start it off by launching another poll, first of all. And I want to understand from the room today, are you comfortable using AI in your daily workflow in L&D? And then we're going to look at the comparison. And I would expect to have quite a comfortable crowd, because I'm sure we've got our early adopters, our AI innovators in the room. Wow. Can you see this? Can you both see this on your side? What's coming through on the poll?
No, not live. Only once it's complete.
Oh, you can't see. I can see.
I see it.
You can see it. Maybe it's because you're you haven't got
I'm
it.
an outsider.
You're an outsider. We've got about 75% of people have already participated in the poll. I'm gonna end it there, and I'm gonna share it straight away, because this is really, really interesting. So nearly 50% very comfortable using it regularly, feeling confident. Very closely behind, putting themselves just in that little one, somewhat comfortable. I'm occasionally using it, still learning, but only 8% not very comfortable, or only 1% not very comfortable at all. And I think that does match with what we expected from this audience today. And it's interesting, because when we actually start to look at the data, when we look at the report, we are seeing a strong shift towards that AI use, but the majority is still varying really widely. So that curve is starting to move up, but it's not quite there yet. And I'd be curious, Dr. Phil, like, what are you sort of seeing out in the field when it comes to this adoption maturity field curve?
Yeah, very much this actually. So that poll was very interesting. We're seeing, and I'm talking here actually in the very short term, because things change so quickly. But if we can like just think about like 2025, what we're seeing in terms of maturity is a classic shift from very early adoption, so low maturity, through to kind of stage 2 use. Which is a very technical way of saying that what we're seeing generally on the ground is people in L&D teams using AI more, first of all. So the vast majority of us are now using AI in some way. The overall majority is using AI every single day, which is really interesting. But also, like, what we're using it for is the point that's like we're maturing. through.
Yeah.
So I think, let's just say, to put it super simply, if last year was all about individual people playing around with AI tools, mostly to build content, what we've seen this year is a growing number of people using AI outside of the development process to do more strategic things. So rather than like basically asking, what can AI help me to build? Um, we're asking more and more things like, how can AI help me to decide what to build and why and how? And I think that is we're maturing, and we're maturing quite quickly. That is definitely a
Yeah.
sort of step 0 to 1. But I think, just to put it in a bit of context, what's interesting is if we can compare that maturity to other industries, we're still a little bit behind. We're still not as innovative as, for example, product teams, engineering teams when it comes to AI adoption. I think that's to be expected. But generally, we are maturing slowly but surely, let's say, and very quickly, as in year on year.
It's so true, isn't it? And I think there's always going to be a much more natural place for AI to have come into the engineering, into the product space, because there's just that technical level there that was always going to be the case. And you speak about that maturity level, Kristen, where are you sort of seeing teams being able to move from that early experimentation into something quite active? Like what are people doing
Yeah.
differently that are already getting there?
Yeah, well, when I think about the past year and sort of what I've seen from my perspective as an instructional designer, content creator, um, about this time last year was really where I saw us using AI tools to really speed up content creation, as Dr. Phil had said. But over the last year, as those tools have become more sophisticated, I even think about my own journey with Synthesia in the past year, from like just being a video creation tool to now we have interactivity and all of these really great things and a lot of really exciting things to come next. You really start to think about, what does the design process look like when you're not just creating content? So how do you make decisions about when to use interactivity within a video for learning, for example? And so we're starting to use AI tools in those sorts of ways beyond just creating the content. And I think what's important here is that growth mindset piece and really understanding, what don't I know about this and do I need to learn in order to build up that maturity? I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a background in data science, analytics, product design, all this sorts of stuff. And so, something that I've had to work really hard to learn is, when I'm using an AI integration in some sort of data tool, what do I need to understand about what that data is telling me so I can leverage it to make an informed decision about the content and the courses and the learning resources that I'm creating? And so, I think that's going to be the big push over the next year, is sort of upskilling as an instructional designer, as a content creator, to better understand data flows, data science, all sorts of stuff like that, so I can use it to inform the work that I'm doing.
100%. And I think I think there's an appetite for it as well. And we're going to get into that as we sort of start to talk about it. But I suppose, what is someone could go away to today when it comes to that adoption or thinking about it? What are some possible ways that people could start to think about where AI could come into their workflows?
I mean, from my perspective, I agree 100%, Kristen. I think what, like, concrete use cases that I see, for example, people coming into the boot camp wanting to explore. We have access to a lot of data, but as you said, Kristen, we are not data analysts, so we don't really know where to start. And there are some fantastic AI tools out there that enable us to really go deep and analyze trends in both like quantitative, just like confusing and scary numbers type data, and qualitative data. So things like feedback that we get on trainings, things like Slack channels, team channels, all sorts of things, to start to do more semantic analysis of like how people are feeling, and therefore what kinds of trainings they want and need based on real need rather than on a kind of best guess. Um, and so, yeah, that's just a couple of examples. I think the other areas where we're seeing usage expand is into also design. So working with research tools, for example, to explore like, which instructional strategy is the best way to teach this thing to this learner, not just defaulting to, what we always do, but actually digging in and using AI to access research to make much more informed decisions for design as well. So we're seeing generally, as you described, this spreading out of use cases from development to all of the other areas. And I think one thing that's very clear from my observations at least, is that L&D teams, instructional designers, learning professionals, however we refer to ourselves, find more value, most value from AI outside of the development stage because it helps us to decide what to develop and how. So I think it's an exciting change that's going on as well.
Completely agree, and it's definitely. I mean, obviously, we use Synthesia for creating with AI, I completely agree from our point of view as well. This is a lot of what we're using AI for in our team. Is how do we expand it just beyond that sort of development? And I think that leads us really nicely into sort of the next section, which is around like that current value versus the future value and this shift and exploring more of someone mentioned in the chat about what workflow should I be following or what framework should I be following, and these are decisions you need to make. But if we look at like the ADDIE framework, for example, we can see it starting to explore much more across the whole ADDIE framework. And I'm going to launch another poll because I want to understand from everyone here, which general purpose AI tools are you using in your daily workflow? Can we see that? Is that coming up in here? Oh, I think we're getting a poll here, but put it in the chat. I want to see it in the chat then. If we're going to coming in there. What sort of tools are you using in your day to day when it comes to using it? I mean, me, obviously, I'm using Synthesia. I'm using a lot of ChatGPT, building custom GPTs. That was a game changer for me this year. I'd not really done that. And I think I could speak about my own maturity with AI. Like when ChatGPT first came out, I was, just prompting back and forth with it. As soon as I started to make the custom GPT, started to get a much, much better result. And, like getting options, right? Like not just taking the first thing that it gives you. It's like, give me 4 different ways I can do this. Give me 3 different examples of this persona that I want to bring into a scenario. Similar for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite things to do is, I think technically it's called adversarial AI, but I
Mm.
love to, you can really cut through some of its like hallucinations and like tendency to be really sycophantic and just tell you what you want to hear
Yeah,
by asking it to take on like 2 different personas and have a debate in front of you. So like, right,
that's cool.
I am going to turn this document into a training for these people. And it's basically like take 2 positions and debate it out in front of me. And then you have to come to an evidence-based decision and give me why you made the decision. And it just forces AI to think more deeply, to think about thinking. And the results are interesting to watch and much higher, like much higher quality. So yeah, I definitely have expanded my toolkit and I'm also using them in combination with one another like that.
That's awesome. I've not done that. Have you done that, Kristen, before?
No, I was thinking about how I was working with a colleague earlier this week, and we were putting like looking at a project plan, and we were like, "Oh, what does this actually mean? What are we doing with this?" So we put it into an AI and asked it to roast the project plan, and it was
Love it.
actually really helpful because it kind of surfaced like, what is this actually saying here? What do we mean by this? And where could we improve what we're saying here? And I thought that was a really helpful way to use AI. So there was that. But also, I've been experimenting a lot with, how do you make more informed decisions using AI tools? So, how do you make more informed and better decisions? And I think part of that comes to asking the AI tools that you're using to be more like scrutinizing and to tear things apart a little bit because it helps you think a little bit more from different angles and perspectives about the decisions that you're making in relation to what course am I going to develop? Where are my learners not being impacted by this thing in the way that I hope that they are?
Mm.
How can I improve this and make it better? Because if you just ask AI, like, is this a good course or is this content strong? It's most of the time you're going to say, like, yeah, this is a great script. Good job. Would you
Yeah.
like me to like do this sorts of thing? And I think that's because a lot of the large language model tools are designed to keep you engaged and giving it more. So it wants to be something that's inherently positive, but you can also challenge it. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, 100%. I can tell so often that AI models generally are in the back end somewhere, there's a big system prompt in capitals that's like, you are a helpful assistant. And
Oh
that
yeah.
means that it's just going to always go, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think what's really helpful, what has been helpful for me, is to understand a little bit more about how large language models work. And one of the things that I, again, have been playing with that's worked really well is think about AI as an apprentice. It's your assistant, but you're the boss.
Yep.
And one power move that I really recommend everyone does is instead of just asking it to do a thing, tell it how to do the thing. Now, disclaimer, it's always going to be harder work. Instead of just write me some learning objectives, you have to say how. And actually that process of thinking, well, how the heck do I write learning objectives? But do it, bring in some research tools, polish up your practice, write a step by step. And then suddenly, if you give AI both that request, so give me some objectives, but you must follow these 3 steps, and you must give me this output, suddenly it is behaving in a way that is not entirely in your control, but is much more curated and also much easier to curate because you can then check, did it follow the steps? Did it make the thing I asked for? So yeah, that's been super powerful too. So getting AI to argue with itself, but also defining not just what you want from it, but how you want it to do a task, is a framework that works really well.
Oh, massively. And there's lots of people coming in like prompt engineering, like getting that sort of skill level up, which is, something that everyone needs to get to. But I think it's just that intentional piece of really giving the AI the context that it needs to be able to perform the task is where a lot of it starts to fall down. And we'll look at the data here, because when we look at this sort of like shift, it's quite interesting. Because speed, yes, speed is something that we want AI for. We know it helps us do things faster. 100%, but things are moving on from speed. There's a lot more that we can start to do with it. So, you know, from your perspective, like Dr. Phil, how are you seeing AI come more into that ADDIE framework? Like where is it really going to be leveraged, do you think, in like the next few years? Where's it going to have that big impact?
Yeah, so I think in terms of ADDIE, what we're seeing is almost like this decentralizing. So shift away from development. That's not to say that we're not still using AI for development. I think we always will, and it will likely always be our number one use case because otherwise it's very painful, very slow. There's lots of different sorts of value to development. So let's assume that's always going to be there. But I think in 2026, for example, we should absolutely expect to see more and more people using AI and actually I encourage everybody to experiment with thinking about what tasks do I do in the analysis, the design, and the evaluation stages as well. And if, like, where can AI help me? And maybe a helpful framework here is what I'm seeing on the ground is that there are basically three, this is an oversimplification, but it is also true and reliable, and I think it's a helpful way of thinking. There are basically three flavors of AI use going on in each stage of ADDIE. One is faster. And 80% of us still are more or less focused on strategies to make this thing faster. So make the content faster, write a quiz faster, write a script faster, whatever. About 15% of us, though, are experimenting with better. So how can I use AI to actually write the script better? And the answer often lies in, oh, I'm going to go to a research tool first, like Perplexity or Consensus or a deep thinking tool, and ask it to use only, academic research to tell me how to write like a chef's kiss script. Give me the step by step, and then I can use that as my instructions for AI. So that's just one example. And then there is a very bleeding edge, which is only about 5% of usage, which is more transformative. And what the people are doing there is playing with AI to rethink what we do, rather than trying to just oil it and make it faster or pimp it, make it better. It's like, actually, what can we do now with AI that we couldn't do before? Um, and the answer there is that, just to use the objectives example again, maybe I build a little agent which constantly keeps track of emerging research about how to write the best possible learning objectives and tweaks all of my objectives to be always optimal in the back end. And it will send me a little message when it does, but that work is just ongoing. And I just wouldn't be able to do that without AI. So I would encourage everyone to think, right, where can AI help me to get faster, better, maybe even start to reimagine my role in each different element of ADDIE. which is just maybe a helpful way of framing the different types of tasks that we do. But yeah, to answer your question directly, definitely we're going to see analysis and evaluation in particular seem to be growing areas of interest. I don't know about you both, but from my experience, there's a heck of a lot of interest in basically overcoming a problem that's been a bit of a wicked problem for us all, which is evaluation, measuring impact. And there's lots of people experimenting with different little use cases to move, like progress away from happy sheets towards more like performance and behavioral impact measurement. And I can say more about that if it's helpful, but that's definitely a trend that's underway. And that I think is really interesting and will definitely grow in 2026.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in
We'll
in
get
the
there.
session. We're gonna get there. We got some stuff to do. I know, Kristen, you feel from our conversations really strongly about this better, not faster, sort of situation. And I think we'll go because we're 25 past. I want to jump into the budgets and readiness because
Hmm.
we work at Synthesia, so we understand that there is a budget when it comes to AI. There is blockers when it comes to bringing AI into your organization. And I want to just quickly run a poll before we jump into this. And I want to understand from everyone here today, what percentage of your L&D budget is currently allocated to AI related tools and initiatives? You should have the poll coming up on your screen. We got that here. I'd be really curious to know because when I saw the results in this section, I was actually really shocked. I don't know about you two, and for anyone
Yeah.
that's already seen it, it was quite a big shock for me. And again, interestingly, getting similar, there are some people coming through 50% significant focus on AI in their L&D budget. And I'd be curious, what industry are you working in if you have that sort of like real focus? Because again, I think industry has plays a big part on the budget that you get, the readiness and the approach. Like at Synthesia, we can get AI things signed off. Like we work in AI, but I would imagine, Kristen, in like your last role, it probably wasn't as easy where you were
Oh,
before. No,
no.
which is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And then there's got some people coming through in the chat. Much of the AI budget is within IT rather than just simply AI.
Yeah.
So that can be a big part of it as well. Maybe you're just getting a little taste of it in your sort of L&D, but there's a wider sort of piece within it. Um, when we go on to that, into the actual data itself, it's aligning. Interestingly, it's not quite sort of the same thing in here. 11% of today is similar are saying that they haven't got any budget, which is quite similar to the data that we're sort of seeing. So, but then I was just shocked by the don't know. That's what really shocked
Mhm.
me was that people don't know what their budget is, which I don't know. What are you seeing in the field with that, Dr. Phil, with like they don't know like where they're getting this money from to be able to start trying
Yeah.
AI?
Exactly, and I see it all the time. People don't know. That's definitely what, I would have been pressing, representing the people I've been talking to. They don't know. They also, I think budget is maybe a blocker because we don't know where it sits. I think you're right that mostly it sits in IT, and so it can be very difficult to get to it. There's not often a direct line between L&D and IT, so it gets complicated. I think there are other blockers too, and the I don't know my budget is indicative of the fact that people just don't really know quite often on the ground, like what's going on with AI? What's the overall AI organizational strategy? What am I and am I not allowed to do? Which tools can and can't I use? And I think we're getting better at this generally, but I still see a lot of blockers on the ground, which are not about appetite to experiment or willingness to, but they are about fear of breaking the rules, a set of rules that I don't really understand. And I think the leadership in many organizations don't really understand the intersection between L&D and AI, and therefore don't really provide much clear leadership, budget, and all of these things. So hopefully this is another thing that we will see changing in 2026. But this year it's definitely been a barrier that I've seen in many, many different organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so the appetite's there. Like, I mean, like Kristen said, we see it all the time. Long procurement processes to get something, even like Synthesia, like over the line. People have
Yeah.
very robust things in place, quite rightly, obviously. Like people want to make sure that they're protected. So how are people addressing this, Kristen? How can people we
Yeah.
have this conversation internally, advocate? What can they do?
Yeah. I think this actually ties really nicely back to what we were saying about the speed and quality of things. So in the L&D report, apart from security, accuracy concerns and lack of internal expertise are the two biggest internal blockers that people are experiencing. And when we tie it back to the skills to develop for people who are in instructional design, in learning and development, maybe you're the content creator, maybe you're the team manager, but I think developing the skills of how to use AI in an impactful and meaningful way and really understanding it beyond just speed for creation is what's going to make the difference there. So, having the ability to say, like, oh, yes, I want to use this tool because it will help me create faster, that is an easy metric to impact. But how can you understand AI in order to use it and leverage it in a way that will actually make your learning content better? And being able to answer that question within your organization, I think, is what is going to help sort of move those barriers out of the way, because then you can more effectively communicate to your leadership like, this tool is going to help me actually improve learning because of this, this, and this. It knows about active learning, which we know will have a longer term outcome when it comes to like the upskilling of this sort of thing, or whatever your use case or your industry or your training content is supposed to look like. So figuring out how to tie it to other KPIs beyond just speed is really going to make the difference there.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think the more, I mean, I didn't know whether to say this or not because maybe it sounds cynical, but it is true that the more that you can connect that experimentation to like financial return on investment, so time saved, value added, but like what it actually will mean in practice, the better. And one thing that I've seen there's been really like in the organizations and with the individuals in L&D who are getting most value from AI, there's this new mindset, new way of working, which is like rapid testing. So if you're able, there's quite a lot you can do to test a hypothesis. So set a hypothesis, like I think if I'm going to use X tool, I'm going to get X% faster and the quality is going to be X% better. And then just test it as quickly and rapidly and messily as you need to, but build some real data so that it becomes a conversation about impact and, ROI rather than I want this shiny tool because it looks exciting. That seems to be the way that most L&D teams that are thinking more about a tech stack rather than just picking an individual tool, the way that they're making progress is through that kind of more data first approach.
Which is interesting because we've had a question in the Q&A from Chris about, audience response to, it says AI video, but they're getting anecdotal feedback that they don't like AI video or they feel like AI can be inauthentic to it. So and we're going to talk about this in a second anyway, but it's moving beyond like, did you like this course? Yes. It's more like, what is the impact of the work that we're doing? And what impact is it having in the real world that's actually going to start to make the difference with one getting the budget for these sort of things, but actually having a meaningful impact on people. We've also had a few people talking about the environmental concerns when it comes around AI. And we speak about experimentation and trying all of these different things. And I would actually be interested to hear from both of you your thoughts on that and where experimentation, how far should it go when it comes to this? And, it's a big question, but it's something that does come up and I do hear it myself.
Yeah, I mean, from it's definitely a question that I get every single month on every single boot camp is we all get excited and we're trying a million different tools and we're building things and then knocking them down because they're not any good and we're all excited about this prototyping and testing culture and then we think, hang on, I kind of turn the big light on in the party and ruin it all in week 3 by saying, but what is the cost? And I think
Mm.
it's really important for us to be mindful of that that, there are implications to our searches. I think also as individuals, there's not a huge amount that we can do to change overall that, the like ecological impact of AI. But on an organizational level, I think it's really important to be smart about which models that we use and when and how. It probably isn't news to anyone that different AI models use different amounts of, energy per search, depending on what you're trying to do. And one thing I am seeing on the ground, I don't know about you, Kristen, is people being a little bit more selective about when they use fast and cheaper models, which are lower, and yeah, consume less energy versus deep thinking models and content creation models, which are, have a much greater cost, both financially and environmentally. So people are starting to think about this, but at the moment, I think we're so early in the AI adoption era that it's almost a secondary consideration right now.
I agree with that though, Dr. Phil. I think practically within Synthesia, something that I think about when I'm sort of creating content is when you preview your scene or preview your video before you generate it, the avatar doesn't animate because it's wasteful for that to happen. So, I try to limit the number of times I'm generating my video as much as possible. Or now we have like these really great like create with AI tools, so like VO3 and Sora 2 and Nano Bananas and all these sorts of things. But do I always need to have an AI generated B-roll, or can I just use something that's already existing? And so I think if there's concerns there, like thinking about how are you implementing and using this tool and technology, and does it always need to be AI generated down to the last detail? And I think the answer is probably not all of the time. So thinking about things like that too, I think have an impact.
Massively. I'm going to wrap up this section just by sort of, I want people to have a bit of a takeaway of how can they best impact that budget conversation? How can they get people on side? How can they feel more prepared going into those conversations when they want to start leveraging AI? What's going to help them move that conversation along?
I would say again to map it, I agree 100%. Map it to the overall vision, mission, and importantly, like immediate KPIs of the business. And what you do then is to position it as something that is strategic rather than, just a cost center. So I think it's easy to do. Actually, get some help from AI to do it. Give them your KPIs, map it too. But that sort of conversation will get much more traction than can we buy this thing?
Definitely. All right, let's go into the next section, which is one I've been really excited to actually start to talk about, which we touched on a little bit earlier, the agentic AI, human in the loop, the patterns of all of that. So I've been really keen to get to this one because actually I think we need to start here by trying to define what we mean by agentic AI, because it's quite a loose term that has different meaning to different people. It's very new, it's completely in its agency and moving faster than I think any of us could have ever imagined. So when when we start to talk about this, Phil, what are we talking about? Is it agents? Is it bots? What do we mean when we say agentic AI in this context?
Well, I mean, I think you're right that this is not well defined. But a way that I find helpful to think about it is that again, there's three flavors of working with AI. One is you write a prompt. So you basically tell it to do something and it does a thing. Um, if you want to scale that prompt, so use it more than once or share it, then you can build a GPT. The functionality is essentially the same, but it becomes more repeatable, which means it's a bit more scalable. I think an agent is like the third flavor and like the next level of complexity up, in that instead of just executing one task on demand, an agent is usually constantly monitoring data and then sending you reports back. So it's like having a little assistant that's sitting in the next office doing work for you on your behalf while you're having a coffee, rather than a collaborator that's helping you to complete tasks. And I used that example before. Another agent that we build on the boot camp that people love and just help to bring it to life a little bit is a research agent. So everybody sets up a little research agent to keep track of any research updates on the topic of a course that they're designing, and to make recommendations for a specific course and what might need to change. Or it might be that, like, I don't know, compliance law changes and you get a little alert and it tells you what in your course you need to change. But that's always on and it's always monitoring. And it sends you information as and when and if you need it. And so I guess that's more autonomous. It's still following instructions. In all three cases, they're following instructions, but it's less transactional and more output and outcome based. It's also, just as a side note, and this might just be me, but like it's also hard. Like agents, there's lots of companies trying to sell us lots of agentic AI platforms, like Zapier and N8N and Make and others are available. Um, and they're described as no code. I would say they're low code. Like I've compared to building a GPT, agents are complex. So I think absolutely spend time and energy thinking about how you could use agents that were always on to help you in your day-to-day work, but don't be too concerned if building them is a bit of a nightmare because that's not you. So yeah, that's my hot take, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Kristen.
Yeah, I think agents are very fascinating. They're new, and so it's something that we're still kind of learning how to understand. But Dr. Phil, I agree with you completely in how agents are a level of complexity beyond just building a custom GPT. And I think understanding that when you want to use them in your learning content is really important. And when we go back to, again, talking about the skills, like the basic AI literacy skills that you need, that's where it comes back to like understanding how do I write a good prompt? But also pairing those skills with your existing L&D sort of understandings, like what makes a good coaching conversation, what makes a good sort of, you know, when you want to challenge someone on something, how does that help them learn something better? And taking that sort of understanding of human learning design and putting it into these agents and into your prompts will help you build really strong ones that can actually have an impact. But part of that, I think, is embracing the challenge that comes with figuring that out. And again, it goes back to what are the skills that instructional designers need in order to keep up in 2026 with all of this new technology, and digging into those sorts of things and developing that understanding, I think is going to make a difference. In my opinion, you can automate a lot of things. You can use AI to outsource a lot of content creation, even like agentic learning sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's up to us to bring the cognition or be the ones that are orchestrating all of these tools and thinking really deeply and really critically about how do we want this to impact our learners? How do we want this to impact whoever our audience is that we're designing for? And remember that, you know, there's still a level of strategy and thought and even challenge that I have to engage with in order to make that decision well. And that's okay. That's part of, we all know learning is a struggle sometimes, but that's what makes it stick.
And
Um,
it's a journey as well.
it
Like,
is. Yeah.
you're gonna try it. And there's so much positive stuff coming in the chat here about agents, and it's like an employee. You have to train it for the
Yeah.
job. The better you train it,
Yeah.
the better it gets. I can see a question coming in from Brianna. Like, I've been thrown into an instructional designer role. What would be your suggested skill to learn to be really effective in this industry? And I think what you both are speaking about there, this is what's going to separate, I think, people in the adoption of AI. I want to launch a poll because I want to understand, after that fantastic definition from
Mhm.
you two, um, how do you feel about the use of agentic AI in your L&D programs? Like, from everything we just said, the poll should come up in just a moment because I'd be, yeah, really curious to know how people are feeling about it, because there's been fear. There's been some fear about, are these going to replace our jobs? Like, and I think it goes back to that human in the loop. Like, I don't think it's going to get us to a point where, certainly not yet anyway, that they'll be able to fully replace us. I don't know if my
Yeah.
poll's coming up, so apologies for that. We've got the data sort of on this from the report, which we can just sort of have a look at here. And, people are uneasy. People are not
Mhm.
sure. Nearly 30% don't know. People can see it being embedded in the LMS. That comes back to what you were saying earlier about the orchestration of all of these different tools. So it's really, really interesting. And when we look at actually the use cases, AI tutors coming in top, which we're looking at here ourselves. But I'd be curious to know from both of you, to be honest, how are you seeing the reaction actually on the ground from this sort of pattern emerging of what we can start to use agentic AI for?
Yeah. And I mean, I think this is one of the most critical questions for us is like I academically refer to it as like human computer interaction, HCI. But I
Mhm.
mean, not just agentic AI, but any AI. Like, how do, it might be that we can build a million things. And we, for example, can build the most convincing avatar and we think it's a human. Uh, but how does the learner receive that? There's actually a post I put out just today on LinkedIn about this if you're interested. But I think we make a lot of assumptions about, or we focus on the value for us so faster
Mhm.
for us, better for us. But what about the learners? And what I see on the ground is, and I do this deliberately again in the boot camp because I have, in that context, I'm the teacher and they're the learners. So I kind of model this and test this in the boot camp. And so, for example, I mean, spoiler, but I have a little team of GPTs who every single week give feedback as me on projects to every single person in the boot camp. We do it together. And in the third week, and actually it'll be tomorrow morning, I'm going to come out. So, spoiler to anyone who's on the boot camp at the moment, and show people that this was not me. This was me plus AI. And honestly, the reaction is very mixed. The reaction is, oh, it was so good that I didn't know, but you should have told us. Or I've paid a lot of money for this. Like, why the heck isn't it you? Why is it AI? And it's not really about how effective it is, because it's so effective that people don't know it's great, but they don't receive it well. And that in a learning context matters. And
Mhm.
so I think it's good that we are skeptical about this. And I think it's really important that we keep in mind at all times, not just what are the benefits of automating this or doing this for the business, but what's the impact on the instructional designer? And then one level down from there, what's the impact on the learners and the learning experience as well?
Yeah, I think that empathy piece is really important when it comes to all of this because it's really intimidating to a lot of people. Like, why is a robot teaching me this thing? Why, to your point, Dr. Phil, why are people paying for this if this is what it is? But I think with this new technology, it probably feels very similar to the way that email felt like when it first came out. It's like, well, why isn't the person taking the time to just write me a letter? Or when FaceTime and Zoom and Skype and all these sorts of things first came out, like, oh, you can Skype me instead of coming to see me and talk to me, like that sort of stuff. It's new. And so people, I think, by nature are going to be skeptical in adopting this sort of technology. And as instructional designers, as AI experts, whatever seat we're filling or role we're taking on, we need to keep that in mind. Like to your point, Dr. Phil, like what is the experience of the person that's going to use this? And how can I, support them in that or normalize this and acknowledge that and be like, hey, just so you know, this is an AI sort of thing, or this might be weird, but experiment with it and see what happens, see what you can get out of it, and help them discover how they sort of value the experience for themselves, I think is going to be helpful here.
I mean, I completely agree. And there's lots of coming in the chat. There's some questions coming in like, is the uncanny valley a temporary problem? Like, is there something that's going to change? I mean, I would argue that being upfront, certainly today, and from what I've seen from those being and our customers and stuff, is being upfront, really calling out the fact that this is AI tends to have a better reaction. You know, not everything needs an AI avatar put on it. Like it just doesn't. Like sometimes a voiceover is going to be really quite suitable, giving a specific persona to the AI so people can start to build a connection because we do focus a lot on how it's good for us, but ultimately learning only sticks if it's made for our audience. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think I would go back to the point that you raised, Kristen, as well about empathy and trust.
mhm.
Like, I think there's been some controlled studies, and basically the unsurprising conclusion is if we're open about when we're using AI and how we're using AI with our learners, then it has less of a negative impact than if we hide it from them. But there's a really interesting paradox here and like a moral dilemma in a way, which is, many companies, I think, including Synthesia, are trying to get as close to real and as convincing a version of AI as possible. Um, and if we know, which we do know from the research, that humans learn better from humans, and when we tell them an avatar, for example, is AI, their engagement reduces, therefore their learning reduces. To me, there's an interesting moral paradox, whatever there, which is like, do we tell them? Like, if it's going to negatively impact their learning, do we tell them it's AI? Or do we let them think it's a human so they can learn better? And I mean, I have a very strong viewpoint that we should tell them. But it's interesting. And I think a lot of these questions about AI are actually questions about humans and how humans feel and how humans connect. And we should not make an assumption that just because we can build it, we should, or just because we can build it, it's going to be positive, because humans are very complicated beasts.
Absolutely. I think for me, I like to lean into it. Like with AI, you can kind of acknowledge it and be a little on the nose some of the time. And with my avatar and like the academy sort of stuff, I like to say, like, hi, I'm AI Kristen. And if like
Yeah.
something is weird generated about my avatar's hand, like I like to leave it in there. So it kind of showcases like this isn't fully me, but I created this. But then the other part of it too is like lean into the humor and the be on the nose about it even more. And like, for those of you who join our feature Fridays in the academy all the time, when we did our B-roll, like instead of generating B-roll of a person sitting on an airplane for your safety training, generate B-roll of a bunch of cats sitting on the plane. And then you can use a different strategy to build buy-in and trust. And that's humor. And that's, just really leaning into it in that sort of way. And so if that's important, that engagement's important, there's more than one way to build that trust and to build that engagement with your audience. Obviously, transparency is number one, but you can do
Mm.
that in other ways as well.
Absolutely. And I just put a link to it in case you're interested. I have a slightly odd AI avatar, but I always refer to it as Phil-ish. Um,
Yeah, I love that.
so that
Yeah.
it knows the difference. And I think that's the important
Yeah.
thing, as you say, Kristen, is just being upfront and both transparent and building trust and engagement through different mechanisms, which are not about trying to fool anybody about
Oh,
anything. But yeah, for me, it's really interesting though how much AI in general is about, achieving human level X or like convincing everyone of Y. And it's like we don't need to. Like some of the value
Mm.
sits in it being not human rather than trying to, recreate something that is
Yeah.
complicated and yeah. So yeah, it's a very interesting point of view. But one thing I am definitely seeing on the ground, just to go back to this slide, is lots of fear about AI amongst learning designers in particular, concern about jobs. And I think that is a big barrier to adoption. It's not necessarily about, do I want to play and, am I interested? It's more like, is it safe? Not in
Yeah.
a
yeah.
data way, but in a my job and my future and my relevance way. Like the second I build a GPT that does the things that I do using the way that I do it, then what's the point in me? And this is definitely also a big barrier to progress. And again, those companies where I see progress happening is where there is complete transparency on the purpose of AI, the strategy, the impact. This is not, our goal is not to replace you and reduce cost, but to increase value. And those things, they're words, but they seem to matter. And there is a correlation between that level of clarity and experimentation and progress.
Yeah.
I think
Can
this
agree
leads
more.
us really nicely into, because we're getting close to the top of the hour, really the what's next. What's going to be next in real clear terms about what people want from L&D. And I'm going to launch one last poll, which should come up on your screens. Is And we've had questions about this, like what should I do? But I want to understand from the audience we have here, like what types of training or support do you think is going to help you and your teams actually be able to more effectively uh, use it in L&D? And I can see we're getting a huge amount in the AI skills and design. So building practical skills to create
Yeah.
prompts and design, which is very much aligned to what we sort of saw within the report. So it's not sort of like shocking for anything. It's actually coming in as the results are coming in, it's coming in almost exactly the same as what we sort of saw coming through in the report, which makes sense. But I wanted to touch on this just as these were coming through, because Kristen and I were at DevLearn earlier this year, and obviously everyone is, I've got the latest AI tool, I've got this AI plugging. But going back to what we were saying right at the very beginning, the big theme that I saw was measuring impact. L&D doesn't want to be sat on the sidelines anywhere anymore saying, yep, I've got course completion rates, or yes, my learners loved it. They've got to be more data driven with the way that we're really proving the impact of the work that we're doing. So again, so close behind, like, look, it's like basically the same 63% of people. And it goes back to what you were saying, Kristen, about the skills you want to develop, and I want to continue to develop as well, is how do we go beyond the content and look at the real world impact, and actually AI can really help us do that as well. Be curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I really appreciated what Dr. Phil said earlier in the conversation about kind of being a bit scientific about all of this. So, like, what is your hypothesis? And then how do you test and evaluate that? And I think that's where we start here with what's next for L&D in 2026. As you're figuring out how to, like, what tools to invest in, how to use them, how to bring them into your workflow, and then demonstrate their value, not just for you in the business, but for your learners if they're external to your business. Um, getting a better picture painted that's more clear about what is the value and the impact of all of these sorts of things that we're doing, and where does AI and the tools that we use that are AI centric, where does it bring value and where does it still need work? And just painting a clearer picture about that, I think, is going to be really helpful. But Dr. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, definitely. I mean, I love this graph, and if you don't love graphs, why not? But I like this graph in particular, because I mean, I'm most excited maybe about the potential of AI really disrupting and enabling us to achieve something that we just haven't been able to before, which is, what was the point of all of that? So for the past 30 odd years that I've been looking, I've been part of this L&D world. We have constantly put more and more and more cash into L&D every single year. I'm talking here primarily about like enterprise L&D, but even in universities and other contexts. And yet you know, the impact that we have, we still can't really articulate. And so we've got to a bit of a breaking point, which was pre-AI, which is like, look, no more money until you can show me some impact, which is entirely reasonable. And yet we found it very difficult because we're not data scientists, because we're doing a million other jobs, insert like a million reasons, to be able to measure the actual impact of learning. And there's a couple of, again, this is like the 5% bleeding edge type stuff that is still R&D rather than L&D. So it's just research and development work. But the projects that I'm going to be involved in at the beginning of next year all have a similar flavor. And they're all asking, what do we do now to measure impact now that we have access to AI? And so let me just give you one concrete example of, I've been working with a sales organization, and they're starting to measure the impact of sales training and sales coaching by taking a sample of people, giving them the coaching slash training, and then actually monitoring their every call. And AI is able to monitor the calls and, for example, report back on, did they use this language? Did they talk persuasively? Did they, whatever, apply whatever was in the training? And then, if we do that in the long term, did it impact sales? And so we're starting to be able to connect the dots together in a way that we have just not been able to before. Now, I think with this, as I say this out loud, like part of me is like, ugh, because, in order for AI to be very powerful, it has to have access to freaking everything. And it has to monitor you all the time. And I'm not sure how, again, to go back to the person on the ground, how would you feel if every Zoom call was monitored, every Slack channel was monitored, in order to track your progress and performance? It might feel productive, but it might feel like 1984. So you need to just we need to think about this. But I think
Yeah.
for sure, short answer is next year is going to be the year of AI in evaluation, and I think we're going to see a lot of innovations which will make it easier for us to then articulate our value as a profession and then get the investment that we need to keep growing and, you know, to not lose our jobs and all of those things that we've talked about already.
I couldn't agree more. And it's something that I'm really excited about, like genuinely. This has been, I mean, we are literally right at the top of the hour,
Yeah.
basically. I want to end this session by actually announcing the winner of a place on Dr. Phil's boot camp. She's referenced it throughout the whole session. Um, as you have, no, because it's great, genuinely. No, because you've all registered, you were actually all put into a prize draw in order to get a place on this boot camp. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to share my screen. And if I can get an virtual drum roll, please, of who our winner is, it
Okay.
is Gemma Page.
Woo.
So a huge congratulations. You're going to absolutely love this. Boot camp is going to, yeah, and we want to hear all about it. I know you're in the community. I recognize the name. So I'm really, really pleased to give you congratulations on that. And it's going to be huge in terms of what you're going to be able to sort of grow. There have been so many questions. We haven't been able to get to them. And I did fear this might happen. So we are going to take note of all of the questions. And in the follow up, we want to be able to share some answers to all of those. I would love to, I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to say a huge thank you. I'd love to just get a final word from both you, Philip, and Kristen as well. And I just want to get a final word from the two of you and invite everyone to make sure they have downloaded the report and join us in the community and connect with us all on LinkedIn. But yes, please, final word from both of you.
So from me, just very quickly, AI needs you. It needs you to tell it how to do L&D tasks like a pro. It can't do that without you. So if you're going to do one thing to get great at AI, it's about getting great at your craft and knowing how to train this thing to be great at helping us to do our jobs. So yeah, don't be depressed. If anything, this is very empowering.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
I would add to that, embrace the challenge of it. This is new still. Like we're still figuring out what all of this is. So embrace the challenge and the ambiguity of it all. Experiment, remember that you're the one sitting in the seat there and develop your skills and learn. Like it's all a challenge, it's all a struggle, but that's where like the best of the best comes out at the top. So it's okay. We're in it together.
We're in it together, and it's genuinely so exciting. What
It
this
is.
opens for us to develop our own skills and impact our learner
Mhm.
is a really exciting thing. So thank you. I know we're 2 minutes over.
Yeah.
I do apologize, but thank you everyone for being here. I hope we'll see you in another session very, very soon. Look out for the follow up from us. You have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll see you in another one very, very soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
folks.
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.